if you want to support the show, you can go to mwpnews.com/support, where you can pick up my latest book, Succession Planning, and all my other books that have previously been released on Kindle for only $2.99 each. Thank you. Good morning. I know I said I was going to do this on Thursday, but it's Friday. And welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. It's going to be a brief one, I think, because I don't think the game that we're talking about today is particularly deep. And to be clear, I'm not talking about the remake that came out today. I'm talking about the original game for the Game Boy Advance that came out years ago. Almost 20 years ago, I would say, because this would be playing through the game again for the first time. Well, playing the game for the first time. It feels like a early to mid generation game for the Game Boy Advance. It's not doing anything too intricate, although there is some AI in there that is kind of cool. With the minis being able to do what they're doing. The issue I have playing it is I think the game ages kind of well. I'm not saying the game is bad. And I'm not saying, like, for today's standards, it's not bad. For the standards of when the game came out, it's not bad. And we're talking about Mario vs. Donkey Kong, to clear that up. The game you play as Mario, who had a bunch of his, toy Marios stolen by Donkey Kong. You gotta go out and beat Donkey Kong to get your toys back, by going through these puzzle levels where you have to collect stuff. There are a few times where I found the controls to be a little not responsive, although that could have been the version of the game I was playing. And I think that, like, if you jump on a character, like, the jumping mechanic isn't great. It took a little bit for me to realize that, like, jumping onto something is, like, you can jump onto it. Like, it's just a logic thing for me, where it's like, okay, so if I'm walking, I can walk through something. So there's a button. You can walk through the button. If you're walking. If you jump, you hit the button. And it's one of those things where it's like, my brain automatically goes to, if I can jump onto it, it's a physical obstacle, so it takes a little bit for me to get around that. And there were, which is something that was a little bit weird. And then the thing was, it's like I was playing through some of the earlier levels where you would do that, and your jump isn't quite far enough to be able to clear the button. So you hit the button, you gotta go back and do that. I think there is a challenge innately built into the game because there is a demand for you to do it as quickly as possible. They want you to try and get as high a score to get a little star. I didn't go back and get all the stars. I didn't think that was worth my time. I don't think it would have added anything to my experience. Where was I? Because I had to answer a text. I think that the game as a whole runs well enough. And I think that the present system's kind of interesting. I did find that the presents giving you the one-ups did make the game a little too easy at a certain point, because it did overload you with one-ups. And then, conversely, I also found the boss fights against our good friend Donkey Kong to be a little, I don't want to say lackluster, because it was kind of samey after a certain point. But I do think that the battles being this thing where you got to get the garbage can of the button he's pressed, run up to the thing, throw it at him, then run back, get another one. It does get a little tedious, especially when you have when you're carrying it and you have to avoid the You have to avoid the things falling from the ceiling. It gets a little irritating at times. That was something that took me a little bit to get used to, and I still beat it on my first try, but it took me a while. Like, I wasn't able to do it quick, and I was going right up until the buzzer to get that done. There was another big one that they introduced here that I was like, oh, that's cool. Oh, the kind of Lemmings like mini game that happens toward the end of each one, where you take all of the Marios that you collect and you have to get them through a maze while leading them. That was kind of cool. I didn't find too much of a challenge. And I think the thing is, too, maybe the new one solves this, but everything here feels like there's one solution. And granted, this is a Game Boy Advance game from 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. So, yeah, the limitations of the hardware are going to dictate how wide ranging your options are when it comes to completing the puzzle. It feels like the person who made the puzzle had their solution, um, and that's the one you can do. There isn't room to improvise. If you're looking for a game where you can go and you can do multiple ways to get through a puzzle, this is not it. Um, um, yeah, it's a fun enough game. I think the art style does hold up. Like I think that the 16-bit graphics that we get, I don't know if it's 16-bit. Maybe I'm just speaking out of my ass on that, but it looks kind of 16-bitty. Like whatever the graphics that we got on the Game Boy Advance, I think aged the best out of the 2000s video games. It's like even if you go back to like PS2 games or PS1 games, they don't age particularly well. Going back to the Game Boy Advance, though, they do age very well because you are dealing with this hardware and artistic limitation of physically what you can and can't do with this style game. And I think that a lot of times that we're kind of in the opposite of that now, where you have so many options for what you can and can't do that that what you can do, that like thinking back to, well, what can we do to scale back and really make memorable with a smaller scale doesn't really exist anymore. Yeah, I mean, playing this game didn't really, and I think that here's the thing: playing this game did not make me want to go and get the remake or the remake, the ground up remake that they have coming out today when this goes live, and I think that is, I get a remake is inherently made for nostalgia. But I don't think that this is one where I necessarily need a remake. This is one where if they put it onto the Game Boy Advance Switch Online expansion, that would have been a better way to have people experience this, I think, rather than have them pay $60 retail for a brand new game. That's kind of where I feel about this, and I feel like that's kind of a misstep by them. Especially considering it is a Game Boy Advance game where there already is infrastructure to port this without having to go into something else ridiculous. Yeah, and I feel like that's like that's kind of where I am on all of this. Like we have Pokemon Day coming up at the end of the month because this is an annual presentation, so we know there's going to be a big thing, and it's one of those things where it's like, I think now if they announced they're going to do a remake of Red and Blue, like a faithful remake of Red and Blue, I'd be like, yeah, but why? Just port the original and I'll play the original. I don't want to pay full retail for a game that is, what that was in 1996. And I feel like that's kind of where I am on this. Like, had they come out now with a remake of Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, I'd be a lot less interested. Had they come out now with a remake of Metroid Fusion ground up, I may have bought that game and enjoyed it because it's more story driven and it's more in depth. This one's kind of light. This one feels like a perfect one where this should have just been put onto Switch Online expansion and just been like, oh, we have Mario vs. Donkey Kong on there now. Just go and play that. Like in the same way where it's like it's a case by case basis. This feels like a case where they did the wrong thing by remaking it. Unless the game is not just a straight remake and there are other things added to it, which I don't know. I haven't played the remake. I'm not 100% on that. But this is the kind of thing where this feels like, based on what the original game was and how the original game worked, this feels like something that should have been do it in the, what's it called? Do it on Switch Online expansion and have fun there. Like, there are games for the Game Boy that you could do this kind of, rebuild it. Like, I think if they did Super Mario 3 with, and just did it straight with modern graphics, I would pay for that. And I would pay full retail for that. If they did Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, I'd pay full retail. Metroid Fusion, I'd pay retail. Like, and I know I said Pokemon, but I feel like if they did, Ruby and Sapphire, but in the style of Legends, which isn't a remake then, but if they did, or even if they did it Let's Go style, if they did it, Diamond and Pearl style, I would probably buy that. it is one of the. It's a weird situation though. I don't exactly understand why. Maybe it is the fact that this game is so short, and I was able to play through it in a few hours and be like, all right, well, I got what I needed to out of that, so let's move on. Um, this kind of game, and I feel like, again, I feel like the target audience of the remake is probably people who were nostalgic for this, people who played this as a kid. Um, but the thing is, it's like I didn't play Metroid Fusion as a kid, and I feel like I would definitely buy a Metroid Fusion ground up remake. I don't know. I just feel kind of weird about it. But we will wrap up there for today. Next week we'll be back with Pokemon Puzzle League and Pokemon Puzzle Challenge, two games that I don't believe are the same game, but when I set the schedule, I was fairly certain they were, and I feel that that's incorrect. But we'll wrap up there for today. And until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.